Should you move to Gold Coast in Australia or Hawaii in the US? Seems like a simple thing to answer. But after being told how Gold Coast is better than Hawaii can ever be my whole life, I decided to come all the way here to see it for myself. And that's why today, I want to show you the data and my personal experience of living in both of the places, as well as breaking down my expenses like the cost of housing, eating out, and buying stuff. And at the very end, I'll give you my honest review. Is life better in Hawaii or Gold Coast?
And if you think that, hey, there ain't no competition, one of them is totally better, then I'm sure you'll be surprised by the end of this.
But we need to set up some outlines for how we're going to compare them, just so we can be as fair as possible. For the price, I'll be using the US dollar. And for rent, since in America, rent is paid every month, while in Australia, rent is calculated on a weekly basis. So the number I mentioned in the following section will be the monthly rent, so it doesn't get confusing. Because housing is the first thing you need. A great chunk of your income probably goes straight into paying the rent. And with two of the most beautiful places to live, well, one of them has to be more affordable at the end of the day. In Hawaii, I picked the city of Honolulu, since this is where most people live. And whatever you want, you can get it all within walking distance. And it used to be affordable too. In 2019, like only 7 years ago, a 2-bedroom apartment was about $2,000. But now I looked up the same listing of the same room, you have to pay over $3,000 a month. A few of my friends say it's still possible to find a studio apartment. That means you only have a room and nothing else for $1,600 a month. But the average is still about $2,200 a month, which is simply crazy when you consider the minimum wage is only like $14 an hour and stuff.
I sincerely think how anyone's able to afford living here without having like double income, multiple jobs, and having no kids at this point.
But now let us see if life over there in Gold Coast is a bit affordable than you think. And the perfect time to subscribe to this channel if you love the video so far. And what makes it easier to compare is that a few of my Aussie friends also moved to Gold Coast recently. So not only do I have my own personal cost of living, I also have their experience to give you the overall number of what to expect to pay to live here. Now from the looks of it, you might look at those crazy high-rising luxury housing and duplexes for sale in Gold Coast and think to yourself, well, if there's so many available units, the prices must be going down. Gosh, if only we live in a fantasy world like that. The first 2-bedroom I found, they told me it's gonna cost over $1,800 a month. And a lot of houses with 2 beds and 2 bathrooms that you see, well, good luck paying $2,100 because that's what they wanted me to pay. Even if it's like super far away from any other beach. But I did manage to find a few 1-bedroom units around major attractions like Surfer's Paradise, but still around $1,200 a month. And it's literally like living inside a tiny shoebox. But overall, I can say that living in Gold Coast is at the very least 40% cheaper than Hawaii, especially if you consider the average waiter and bartender makes about $16 an hour, which is a bit higher than working in Hawaii, not to mention the benefits and work-life balance, so I'm giving Gold Coast the first win.
But it has to be said that this housing market you're seeing right now, this isn't right, okay? It feels like we're all losing at the end of the day. And the only ones making any real money are the landlords and policymakers.
But we still gotta save that money somehow. And that's why up next, I want to compare the cost of buying and eating stuff around. And also the taste, bro. If they don't taste good, then the price really doesn't matter, right? First, let's look at the ones in Hawaii. Cause if you love eating rice all day every day, bro, you come to the right place. The local Hawaiian food is known for adding rice into everything. And somehow they always taste good. It's like magic or something, bro. This whole box of sashimi was $16. This whole plate of noodles was $19. And this massive combo from the local Panda Express was less than $40. Now, tipping in the US is kind of random. You used to only tip when you sat down at a restaurant, but now you kind of have to tip completely random. Like you didn't use to tip at Starbucks, right? But now I went in there, bro, they wanted me to tip $2 on top of my already $6 cup of coffee. Like, are you out of your mind?
I'm just saying, at this rate in the decade, we're all gonna be tipping more than we have to pay for the drinks.
Yeah, this sounds like a total disaster. But what about Gold Coast? It's a massive travel destination. There ain't no way for things to be affordable, right? So at first, I decided to go into a super fancy Thai restaurant inside one of the biggest shopping centers, and guess what? The vegetable fried rice was only $15. And the one outside of the shopping center, bro, it was literally only $10. But sadly, I can't find any Starbucks in Gold Coast because according to my Aussie friends, they said it's too expensive and it tasted terrible. So they went out of business or something. But the local coffee is only $4.50. So it's safe to say that you pay around 40% less to have the same thing in Gold Coast as opposed to Hawaii. And you don't have to tip, bro. You pay the amount you see on the menu in Australia. Isn't that crazy? How is it that Australia already figured that out and we're still stuck in the Middle Ages in America? And for the taste, I don't see a massive difference except for the chips in Gold Coast. It's the best I've ever had. And it was only $8.40. But for the sushi, because you have so many Japanese immigrants in Hawaii dating back over 100 years, so it's no surprise that they make the best sushi. So in the battle of food prices and the taste, I want to give Gold Coast 2 points for the lower price and the chips, but also a point to Hawaii for the amazing Japanese food.
Well, that's only 1 point lead between the two. Let's see if we can divine the winner in the following section.
But for that, let us compare the grocery cost. Even though I couldn't find anything remotely close, like the same brand or the same stuff, and the yogurt in Hawaii was $8.60, while the one in Gold Coast was only $3.40. But you see, it's different brand and way different size, so I don't think it's a fair comparison.
I believe that based on data, and people living in both the US and Australia, stuff like cheese, vegetables, and fruits are genuinely a bit pricier in Australia, but most other stuff is kind of the same.
Let's also talk about hotels now that we're at it, since I managed to stay in very similar hotels within walking distance to a major beach in both Gold Coast and Hawaii. But the one in Hawaii was over $200 a day, and you pretty much only get a room and nothing else.
And not to mention you have to pay a few dollars to do laundry, which will come into play when you look at the hotel I found in Gold Coast.
And right away, you will notice how the room was at the very least 5 times bigger, with a whole living room, a kitchen with a balcony, and the washer and dryer were completely free to use. But you know the craziest part? A day was only about $150. I know many complain about how Gold Coast is being overpriced, and you'd rather go to Bali and Odisha, but in comparison, you can see Hawaii is the one really being overpriced. And that gets a point for Gold Coast. I also want to point out that the public transit, like buses and trains in Gold Coast, are so much cleaner and well-maintained than the ones you see in Hawaii. You almost never see any rubbish or a coffee stain left by the previous passenger.
And it's insane when you think about that. They probably get millions of travelers, but somehow they manage to keep everything so tidy and neat. I seriously don't know how they did that.
And for the weather, there's not much of a difference. You only get one season in Hawaii, and Gold Coast is always sunny and warm. Although I do believe it's easier to get sunburned in Gold Coast due to the ozone layer being relatively thin compared to Hawaii. As for the locals, Hawaiians are known for being the most friendly. They help one another, and you can see that in their everyday life. One time, I didn't have the money to pay for the bus, and the local helped me pay for it, which literally never happened to me anywhere else. And you can also see that from the way the locals value their history and roots. Hawaii has been through a lot. They used to be a kingdom like 200 years ago, and then a lot of things were took away from them when the Americans came. But I'm glad to see that many of the history and spirit still remain, and the Hawaiian language is still widely being used among the locals.
But for locals living in Gold Coast, I don't know how to break this to you, but I didn't find any of them. Even though I was like looking around, hey, you guys from here? And they all turned out to be from other parts of Australia, or like other nations and stuff.
Now let's give another point to Hawaii for being super duper friendly, and also for the beautiful Hawaiian culture that you still get to experience as soon as you arrive. But to my surprise, I didn't find that much difference between living in Gold Coast and Hawaii. So if you're still wondering, hey, which one is better? I say it really depends. It's easier for Americans to move to Hawaii, and it's easier for Aussies to move to Gold Coast, as they both represent the perfect place to retire and a relaxing everyday life.
But I'm kind of worried though. Like, you know how everything is being Americanized these days with capitalism and stuff? How long do we also need a tip when eating out in Gold Coast? Bro, that's gonna be a living nightmare.
But that's why in this video, bro, I want to show you some of the biggest things Australia is doing way better than America that you simply wouldn't believe if you don't travel there yourself. But you can click on the video to find out what it is.